So, welcome everyone. My name is Adam Rosman. I will be your host on today's Metal3 Community meeting. Today is the January 12th, 2022 Metal3 Community meeting. Be aware that the session is being recorded. And yeah, I think we can already start with our agenda, as quite a lot of people already joined. So first, as usual, please, if somebody is new to the meeting, haven't been here before, please introduce yourself if you want. And if not, then I think, Feruz, you can start with the first agenda point.
Yeah, just a moment, sorry. I had a link that I wanted to share. Well, maybe I can just explain it later on. Hi, everyone. So what I wanted to talk is about addition that we're planning to do for the metal cube. And the idea is that we would like to kind of create user guide style metal cube book that is purely focused on the users of the metal cube, meaning not the developers, but rather someone who is starting with the project, someone who is interested to use, or someone who is interested to try it out. As such, we want to have like very minimalistic user guide kind of sort of book that would explain, for example, primarily like BMO, Ironic, CAPM3, and IPAM. And the idea is that it would first like give some brief introduction, what they are, why would someone need them, when someone can use that, and how to install, of course, each and every component. For example, if we talk about someone who is using just the bare metal operator, not interested in CAPI workflow, we would like to just show the instructions how to install it differently in different environments, for example, or how to install Ironic container image differently, whether it be outside of Kubernetes cluster or inside the Kubernetes cluster, and how to install cluster API provider Metal3 in collaboration with BMO, of course, and Ironic and so on. And then the biggest point is actually talk about the features, which is the biggest part. Because if I take as an example, bare metal operator, we have quite many nice features out there, which are missing user guide documentations. It's true that they have documentation like in the docs, but they're like design docs. They're not meant for end user or who is someone who is just starting the project, or for someone who just wants to use the feature just to see how it works and what it does. So the one of the section that we're planning to see in this user guide is feature that would talk about big features in BMO, in Ironic, for example, in Metal3 Ironic, I mean, in CAPM3, show how to install them, how to use them, and what they do, and so on. We actually had a proposal a long time ago. It was when Doug was involved in the Metal3, and we have proposal that was approved in Metal3 docs that is actually building the structure for this book, but the actual content was missing. And we internally with Ericsson teams kind of agreed internally that we would be willing to start writing documentation and ask for the community as well to help us with that. So in that sense, we wanted to create, for example, GitHub issues. Well, there will be several, for example, one, write documentation about reboot API, or write documentation about secure boot, and so on and so forth. And then whoever is interested could assign to himself or herself and then start writing the document and then submit the document. It goes through reviews. If if it looks good, then it's merged to particular repository, and then the tooling that built this book will actually render the markdown and then build this book. So where to keep the book content? Right now, every repository has its own some amount of documentation. Again, if I take bare metal operator under docs, we have some documents that explain some of the features or how to install the BMO in test environment, how to play with it, but not much than that. Same in Kappa3, same in probably Ironic and in IPAM. But now what we want is to have one place, which would be ideally for maybe Metal3 docs, have separate, like the same that Adam is showing, separate directory called user guide. We already have this actually, where we would keep separate directories for each repository and then put the content in there. That means in BMO, in Kappa3 and IPAM, there will be README, of course, saying that, like just talking about what it is, and then referencing to the book so that user goes to the book to understand more about that component, rather than going through each repository docs folder, reading 20 plus documents to understand the features. That means if in the future there is a new, let's say, new feature being added to Kappa3, the proposal would still be submitted to the design folders in Metal3 docs, and then implementation go to its own repository, and then we have some sort of user guide that is going to this place, for example, to the user guide separately. That's purely meant for the users. So maintenance, say like it's pretty easy, pretty straightforward, and everything is set up. Adam was showing you this example book, and the link is available on the document. And this we started internally, just included how to install Ironic, Metal3 Ironic, how to install BMO, how to install Provider, Kappa3, and some features examples. So you can see that it's pretty minimalistic, and it is just walking you through step by step how to install things for each and every component. So the tooling is there, and the only thing is missing is the content. And I wanted to hear from the community if everyone would agree that we start this effort, because I think having like documentation is really, really important, especially for open source projects, because if you don't have at least good user guides, then there's less interest in the project and less contributors and so on. So yeah, that's what we're thinking to start. But of course, before doing that, we need community's agreement on that. And we would love to hear your opinions, objections, ideas on that. I think I've covered everything what I wanted to say. Yeah, and I'm open for questions if there's any.
Thank you.
I absolutely love this idea. And after reading similar user guides with Rust and stuff, and I can volunteer for doing any Ironic related parts, because it's not the first time I actually writing documentation for Ironic or for related bits.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dmitry.
Yeah, I also think it's a very good idea. I have a question. How do you think could be distributed the book, just published on the web?
Yeah. So how does it work right now is in like for each repository in the Adam, would you mind if I share my screen? I think it would be easier for me to explain.
Okay, let me stop the sharing.
Okay. Let me try that. Yeah. Just a moment. I need to open this link. Probably. Yeah. So this is exactly the same as we have up in upstream. In the docs, we have this user guide, which is right now just empty, that has just introduction page, and we actually have book that is running based on this, but it's empty. Then how to distribute? What I was thinking is we could have separate like just directories for each repository. For example, if I open BMO, then put BMO specific or BMO related features separately here. And when we're rendering it in the book, book has this, just a moment. Yeah, the summary MD, where you can just make the structure as you want for the book, and then put in any order you want the content. Your content or each section can be in one huge markdown file, or it can be separated into smaller separate files. It doesn't really matter. And the book is basically also based on the markdown style summary format. So this is based on the MD book. The Rust, as Dmitry mentioned, I think it's written in Rust, sorry. And what we have done so far for the Netlify is that it's configured. We have the Netlify account from CNCF, and it's configured to build this book every day. I think it's in the morning somewhere, European time, based on the latest content from the master branch. So let's say if there was some PR adding some new feature like documentation yesterday, we review the PR, we merge the PR, and tomorrow morning, for example, the automated build will start building the new version of that and publish it to the same static URL. I don't recall what was the URL we had. No, this is the demo, but we have some URL for the Metal3 already, but we're not using it. And as said, it's building automatically by the Netlify. To Netlify, we have said that, hey, Netlify, just always watch the content of Metal3 docs user guide folder or directory, and every day you run mzbook command. So we have kind of in the command line of the Netlify, we have said that it has to download the mzbook binary, if I'm not wrong. If I don't, I think, yeah, that's how we do it. And then once it downloads or installs the binary of the mzbook, it then renders the book. Once the book building is finished, it just publish it to the URL that we've given it. And yep, that's how it is. Did I answer your question, Andrea?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Cyrus.
And you can read it in the chat now, in the Zoom chat, but I think it's Dmitry who mentioned it, that you can also generate a PDF if you are
Yes.
Yeah, if you are checking out the website, on the web page, on the top right corner, there is a button and you can download it in PDF format.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually a really nice feature that it automatically gives you just PDF version if you want to download it. And if someone has found some bug, you have this GitHub icon that redirects you to that particular place that someone can report the bug or fix the bug. Then you have different modes. I mean, it's pretty simple, and we're not the first using this. I've seen personally like many other projects in the Kubernetes area using similar, because the mzbook takes a lot of hassle of building the book. And Markdown, we're all familiar with Markdown, so I think that's the easiest way for us to write the docs. And we can always, of course, keep the documentation up to date. For example, some features might be updated, and whenever we notice that there is a big change, we should also, as a reviewer of the PR, keep in mind that part in the book should be also updated, so that we don't have outdated instructions. But yeah, that's what we have in our mind. Any other questions?
if nobody has questions, I have a practical suggestion on how to proceed.
Please.
Maybe you can propose only the structure right now without actual content so that we can merge it pretty much immediately, like today. And then we can populate existing content in separate pull requests so that we don't get stuck into nitpicking over existing chapters. What do you think?
Yep, that's actually, it sounds really nice. That I completely agree. Let's put the frame there, and then we one by one we extend that. We add actual content, but the structure will be just extending, like the frame. So I'm +1 for that, and I can quickly submit changes. It's very trivial and minor change actually.
Yeah, let me just note it down.
Any other suggestions meanwhile? One more thing I forgot to mention is we already have some documentations in our website. Yeah, I forgot to mention that. And we probably all know that it's a bit outdated, if not too much already. It's the website is really nice. I personally really like it, and there is a really nice good content, especially the blog posts. And we've been referencing the website mostly for a quick start, and the quick start is focusing only on Metal3 events in virtual environment, basically, but not much than that. So at least for those blog posts that include some features, we could also add some references in, for example, if I'm writing documentation for pivoting in this book, I could add some references to our website where blog post was written for pivoting when it was initially implemented, for example. Because there is really nice stuff here as well that I think shouldn't be just left out, although it's been a while that it hasn't seen any patches in this repository. But yes.
I think we should be careful to avoid ending up with too many documentation sources. So maybe having tried as a separate page is fine, but maybe we just want to migrate everything to user guide and maybe provide specific links.
Yeah. Actually, one more on that point. I was also thinking what everyone think about moving all sorts of documentation, for example, from BMO, CAPM3, and etc., to a single place. For example, let's say some features already have some documentation, maybe not very detailed or not very the way we want in this document, in this book, but there is some documentation already in repositories, which cannot be just left away. So like if you're writing some documents for those features that already have documentation, we could base our new content on that. But then that means we have two copies. One, for example, in Kappa 3, and then a bit updated, a bit more explained in the Metal3 docs, which is meant for the book. Then the question is, does it make sense to still keep it in the Kappa 3, or we just forget about it and then only focus on the Metal3 docs and write everything there, keep things updated in one place to avoid having two copies and then having like desynchronized documents, and it's, I think, so much work.
I personally find it a bit awkward to direct users to GitHub for documentation, to be honest. I know some projects do that. As a user, I never liked. I like rendered version, and I like them in central place with good cross-linking, with good images, formatting, and so that I can have overview of all features, not just what this wrapper can do, but I don't know what others wrapper can do. You know, I just migrate everything, honestly.
Yep, that's my plan as well. I would really love to have just one source of truth. It is easy to the writers, to the authors who are contributing to that, and it's easy for rendering the book. We have one book that has all the content needed. Yeah.
One question about like if we want to have everything in this book, like how do you make it clear and easy to say distinguish, like this is BMO documentation and this is CAPM3 documentation? I'm just worried that you don't like mix everything up in one book and then you lose control over what's what.
Yeah, that's a good question. So if Adam, perhaps you can open that example book. Yeah, so we could actually have like this separate kind of chapters, like chapter 1, let's say intro or project overview. Then chapter 2 is a big chapter that is fully focused on BMO, let's say installation, its features. Then you have CAPM3. So that's one way I was thinking that it would just make sense to separate. Otherwise, I don't know for now at least. But I think this is already kind of clear. Like when if I'm the user, if I just open it, it's clear to me. And I was thinking that in the future, if this flies, like having this book, if it just goes really nice as we expect, then in the future we could extend it and have like another section. For example, this is not the final book, this is just an example. We can have, for example, another section, like say section 4, which is meant for developers, where we would explain about the APIs a little bit maybe, because I think the best place for the APIs is the Go doc, and we already have it. For example, we could talk about controllers, we could talk about internal logics of the controllers, reconciliation loops, and so on, and some other stuff, which is purely meant for developers. But just again, to answer your question, like I was thinking that we could just have this kind of numbered sections, or we could like bold sections that says, hey, this is BMO, this is CAPM3, this is IPOM, ironic.
Okay. I'm not sure I completely like it. Like it to me, it doesn't make sense that like like you order it basically then, like in a book, like bare metal operator comes first and then CAPM3. I would more expect it to be like 2 different books or something like that, but well, I guess you can still distinguish what's what.
Yeah, the reason I was thinking like this is, so it's based on the architecture of the metal cube. Like BMO can work by itself. BMO, let's say, does not depend on CAPM3. So if I'm the user, I would like first, for example, understand how to install BMO, how it works. Once I'm aware of the BMO, for example, then I would just go one layer up to CAPM3, which includes BMO as well, which says, hey, you also need to install BMO. And I already know how to install BMO because I've gone through it, for example. And like
that's a very, very good point. Thank you. Yes, then I'm all for this.
If I may insert another comment on this topic, there's also this thing that they don't exist in complete isolation. Because, for example, if you look at this sample book, there are automated cleaning API in 2 sections. This is 3.22 and 2.31. So these things are necessarily related, and they will be very actively cross-linking each other, I assume. It's not the only example. I think if you know, when you start talking about metadata, user data, these things affect both the API provider, the cluster API provider, and BMO. So you may lose, if that were 2 different user guides, you could have lost some of this, aspect of understanding that these things are intimately related. As an example of that, in the OpenStack world, we have separate things, Ironic and Ironic Inspector, you probably know that. So they have two different guides because they're two different projects. And that's not convenient. Essentially, in the Ironic guide, we have a section about Ironic Inspector. In an Ironic Inspector guide, we have a lot of cross links to Ironic. And that becomes a bit chaotic when we, for example, remember to update Ironic with some new information and forget to update Ironic Inspector guide, and they start contradicting each other because they have serious overlaps. So from a user's perspective, when I just come here and okay, so what is this Metal3 thing? It's better when I really like how I look at this example, and in the left, I see a complete overview of all like user level things that are happening here. I see two major components. I see their features. I see installation guides. I don't know, for me, it looks really clean and beginner friendly, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and just to add it, I think with the book the goal is to explain the concepts and explain in detail and in connection the parts to each other. So it would be very important to be able to easily reference the connections, because usually, at least what I noticed recently, even from our own team, from developers, but reading the Slack, that usually beginners, but even people who are working on the project for sometimes few months, half a year, something like that, mention that certain concepts were very hard to grasp on the beginning, because we are very highly abstracted and we use a lot of different components. So I think it would be nice to see things next to each other referenced in one package.
So, not to disagree with you, but the counterpoint to that is that if docs are in the repos, in the individual project repos, it makes it a lot easier for reviewers to say, oh, here's your new feature. Where's the documentation? It should be in this PR. And if you have them in a separate repo, the tendency is for people to think of that as someone else's job. Oh, that's the documentation team, which doesn't exist, by the way. So I guess that's the danger of having them all centralized in one place, is that they're not right there next to the code, and so they just get ignored and not updated.
I can assure you it's a problem when you have them in the same rep as well. Just based on Ironic experience, people just don't submit the docs and don't update the docs and say we will follow up and then never follow up.
Right, yeah, I mean, but you can, reviewers have some control over that, right?
Yeah, I also agree with Dmitry, because even in Metal3, I've seen many times some features being added, but no documentation is added, and we still proceed with those PRs. So perhaps that's kind of something.
I mean, I've certainly done that.
Perhaps that's something that we as a maintainers and reviewers should also note, that be a bit strict with that. Maybe like I don't know if it's going to slow down the process of patches to be merged, but we're talking about big features here, so it doesn't really happen every day. So maybe even technically we could somehow automate this process. I'm not sure if that's possible from the PRAO side, but I could think about it. To automate somehow that would say, hey, you haven't, for example, submitted this PR, for example, or you have to reference a PR in the docs, and then Tide would say, okay, now I'm happy with everything, then I will merge your PR, for example. But I'm not sure if that's possible, just thinking out loud.
I think we can have humans do that. We don't necessarily need to replace humans and interactions with processes and tools. It's the same kind of discipline as with a single wrapper, really. Just you have to have reviewers saying, okay, this is a base this is a big API addition, do you have at least a draft documentation PR to accompany that?
Yeah, we can help reviewers and developers, even if it's a manual task that, like introducing a label that needs documentation or needs to be in the book or some label, we can figure it out. And until it is not removed or not switched with a have the documentation label, we would block it. And it would be added by the reviewers manually. If that would be a help. I think that's relatively easy, but Feruz, if you disagree, you can say you are the PRAO expert.
No. I'm fine. I was just thinking out loud. I said I don't even know if that's PRAO has that capability.
We can do what we do in OpenShift with some other processes. We can add a custom label that is required for merging, and this label will explicitly say, I don't know, docs content checked or something like that, and only approvers can add that. So if you want to have some formal processes around that, you can do this.
Yeah, maybe that's the best if just the approver needs to put it there, just a single label. That sounds the simplest.
Sounds good to me.
A small request around structure, completely unrelated to what we just discussed. Is it possible to put bare metal operator and cluster API blah 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 content into different subdirectories so that we can have different owners? So we can actually match owners between bare metal operator and the bare metal operator subdirectory. Does it make sense?
I personally didn't get the question. Sorry, could you? Are you talking about owners or like documents?
Yeah, so for this user guide, we have documentation related to different sub-projects. It would be good if people who can approve changes to bare metal operator could also approve changes to the bare metal operator section of the user guide.
Yes, I've absolutely +1. Yes, now I got it. So yeah, definitely we have sub-owners file proud nicely supported. We already use it in BMO, I think. For example, in some certain folders, there are some people who can approve, but not in the whole repo. So yeah, definitely I would need +1 because I think owners of the BMO are the best people who know about BMO, and owners of the Kaplan3 are the best people who know about Kaplan3 and others. So I would heavily support that.
Is there anybody else who would like to share idea, opinion about this? I think it's quite a new thing for the project. Because if not, then I think we have spent quite a lot of time on this. So if Feruz, when Feruz finishes with the note, you can continue.
Yeah, I think we can continue. I'll just continue writing that. No worries. Thanks. Oh, it's my. I forgot. Sorry. So the second item I wanted to discuss is about this proposal host data CR for like new CRD for the BMO, specifically meant for keeping the inspection data. First of all, thanks a lot for all of those who reviewed. I really appreciate it. I was asking for the lazy consensus before the Christmas, and I think we kind of verbally agreed on that, at least with Dmitry. But then there were some good comments and points raised from Andrea, and there were two comments from like one from Andrea, and then Zane also pointed out really nice point on that, and I think we can agree on that, that we for time being before API bump in the BMO, we keep the status writing the inspection data into the status. And then copying might also happen from the status into the new CRD in some circumstances, which is mentioned in the document. And Andrea proposed that maybe for now, for the time being, when we're doing that, we inform the user with some logging or like in the controller log, for example, so that everyone is aware of that thing happening. And when we have the API version change in BMO, the plan is to completely remove the status, keeping the inspection data in the status of BMH, and then only rely on this host data CR, which would be just the only source of truth for the inspection data. That means at that point we'll have some cleanup with logging and in the way the controller acts on the inspection data. So just wanted to confirm that Zane and Andrea, that we're all on the same page, and perhaps if looks good, we could just merge the proposal, and I would really love to start submit the implementation. I started it a long time ago, but just wanted to make sure that it looks good to all of us.
Yeah, for what regards me, I also reviewed it this morning and added that comment for the backward compatibility. So it sounds reasonable for me. My biggest fear was not to introduce anything that could result in a breaking change or strange behavior spotted in future, but I think the comments clarified. So in general, I'm happy with the current shape of the proposal. So it's fine for me. I think we reached and clarified all the points.
Okay, thank you, Andre.
I have not had the chance to read the whole thing again, but I trust that you've got it under control.
Yeah, no worries. Actually, it's my bad. I actually forgot to submit a new patch that includes only the changes on top of what I submitted initially, and I was just amending. Then I realized that I amended and I was writing what changes are made. But Zane, if you would like to go one more round, and if you need time, feel free. But otherwise, if you based on what you remember and what you just heard, it looks okay. Let's merge it.
Yeah, I will try to do it after this meeting, but don't wait for me.
Sure. Okay. Just one thing. The one more thing I need is LGTM approved, because I know Andre can give LGTM approved, but there should be one more person. So I just really want to make sure that this proposal gets merged before I submit the implementation. So if someone can give LGTM and plus someone approve, I would appreciate it. Maybe not right now. Maybe you need some time to go through, but it could be later on as well. But yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Feroz. Next thing will come from me. So we weren't the meeting wasn't with a large audience on December 22nd, but we have got an interesting proposal from Andrea, and the proposal was that we should restart the triaging process during the community meetings, and we discussed it there a bit. You can listen to the recording if you haven't done so yet. And after that, we discussed it with Feroz because he had the correct permissions or access rights to actually create triage labels and modify the PRAO. And now he has a pending PR. I approved it, but we are still waiting for the approvers to approve it and the LGTM it. And basically what this entails is we would introduce this basically the same triage labels that Kepi or Kubernetes is using, and we would automatically label with Prow all the new issues with a label saying that it needs triaging, and in a bi-weekly fashion, after all the agenda points have been cleared for that day, we would go through the top 6. I think we discussed the top 6 or the 6 pinned repo related to the Metal3 project, and we would triage them. It doesn't seem to be a long process, because we have relatively few issues. Like bare metal operator is one big, I think that's the most amount of issues that I've seen so far. So yeah, that would be the proposal, and I've sent it on the mailing list, and please feel free to comment on it or add additional ideas. So yeah, does anyone have any sort of opinion about this?
I just to mention, so this triage label, I think it's widely used by Kubernetes, and I think in OpenShift you also use that. Red Hat is using that. So, but what it does is basically when there's a new issue created in any repository, it adds this needs triage label so that people are aware that there is some issue that needs to be tackled during the community meeting. And during the community meeting, we could, during the triage meeting, we could just go through those that has this specific label and then remove the label by adding the kind, by adding the priority, and then setting the status. We've been doing it, I think, a long time ago in Metal3, but it's more or less the same. Yep.
Yes, and I shared with you the document that's described with that how Kubernetes does this, but our will be a bit more simplistic because we don't have that many issues. But I think it's a good thing to check this out if you are interested, and I wrote in the email that if it's fine by everybody, then we would start it on the next community meeting, and we would go in a bi-weekly fashion. Yeah, I think that's all related to this. Yeah, if there's no comment on this, I think we can continue. We have 2 PRs from Himanshu. Are you here? Are you in the meeting?
Yeah, so they went stale, and so I guess like the 190 PM deep dive presentation I'll take a look again and see if it needs to be like there are things that need to be updated. Other than that, the other PR is kind of just for static testing, so probably if somebody could take a look at that. And I have another, I'm not sure like if we can use the BMO one for the user guide, because I guess it's just a high level overview. So, but I will try to find something that I could help with and let the community know. Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot, and I hope somebody will take a look on these, or actually, yeah, pay some attention to these. Okay, I think that was the last one. Does anyone have any comment on this?
Yeah, I see the bot is closed both these PRs. You want to reopen them, and remove lifestyle style.
Sure, I will do that. Thanks.
Okay, I think then this was the last agenda point. I will have one question for you. So I think I will do for all other meetings, and as a last agenda point, I will ask you that, is there anything that you would like to do differently on the community meetings? What would help you? What would be like a better way to do things? Anything really? Sound quality, the videos, the structure of the meeting. Is there anything that you would like to change going forward?
I have not been loving the fact that we cancel the meeting if there's nothing in the agenda.
That was only for the holiday season. That won't be
Okay.
a common
That's
thing.
fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think if we're going to do triaging every 2 weeks, then that means we have a meeting at least every 2 weeks to do that. So that's probably good. But yeah, holidays are weird.
Yeah, I agree. Any other thing? Okay, if not, you can of course always write to me on Slack, on via the email or anything. I would like to hear from you. Anything comes up. But for today, then I thank you for your attendance, and I hope the meeting was fruitful and helpful for everybody. And see you on the next one. And have a nice rest of the day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. See you. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.